As she is served by the waitress, the millionaire freezes upon seeing her pendant. The same one she gave her 5-year-old daughter before she disappeared 18 years ago. Amanda Montgomery sat at the corner table of an upscale Manhattan restaurant, her gaze distant as she swirled the glass of red wine in her hand. The room was alive with muted chatter and the clinking of fine cutlery. But for Amanda, the bustling atmosphere felt hollow. Success surrounded her. Her designer suit, the platinum watch on her wrist, the air of authority that made heads turn when she entered a room. Yet, none of it could fill the void that had carved itself into her soul. 18 years ago, her daughter, Sophie, had been her world. The memory of that day was a blur of fear and panic. A park, a moment of distraction. And then, gone. No one had seen anything. No clues, no demands. Just Sophie's tiny hand slipping away from hers, leaving Amanda with nothing but questions and a broken heart. Amanda absent-mindedly touched the half-heart pendant hanging from her neck. The other half had been with Sophie, a mother-daughter token exchanged on Sophie's 5th birthday. A tear threatened to spill, but Amanda straightened her posture. Vulnerability was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not here, not now. A soft voice broke through her thoughts. "Ma'am, your meal." Amanda looked up, startled. The young waitress standing before her couldn't have been older than 23. She had warm hazel eyes, a shy but kind smile, and an air of quiet resilience that struck Amanda. But it wasn't just that. It was the pendant around her neck. Amanda froze, her breath catching in her throat. The young woman wore a necklace identical to hers, a half-heart with delicate engravings. For a moment, the restaurant noise faded into the background, replaced by the deafening roar of memories and emotions. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the waitress asked, her brows knitting together in concern. Amanda blinked, forcing herself to speak. "That necklace, where did you get it?" Her voice came out uneven, betraying the composure she worked so hard to maintain. The waitress instinctively touched the pendant, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Oh, this. I've had it for as long as I can remember. It's special to me. What's your name?" Amanda's voice was firmer now, the desperation creeping into her tone. "Emily," the waitress replied cautiously. "Emily," Amanda repeated, the name tasting foreign yet familiar on her tongue. "Who gave you that necklace?" Emily hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I don't know. I was raised in an orphanage. They told me I was wearing it when I was found. I'm sorry, but why do you ask?" Amanda's heart raced. Could it be? Was it possible after all these years? She struggled to compose herself, but her mind was already racing through possibilities. "I'm sorry," Amanda said, forcing a polite smile. "It just reminded me of something. Thank you for telling me." Emily nodded, clearly puzzled but not pressing further. She stepped away, leaving Amanda staring after her. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. Amanda barely touched her meal, her thoughts consumed by the sight of Emily and the pendant. Was it coincidence? A cruel trick of fate? Or had she just found her daughter after nearly 2 decades, back in her penthouse later that night? Amanda poured herself another glass of wine and paced the living room. She couldn't shake the image of Emily from her mind. The resemblance was subtle, but undeniable. The shape of her face, the faint dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. But it was the necklace that screamed louder than anything else. Her rational mind urged caution. She had been disappointed before, chasing false leads and enduring heartbreak all over again. But something about this felt different. Real. Amanda sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing, "Private investigators in New York City." If Emily truly was Sophie, Amanda needed to know. She wouldn't let herself be paralyzed by fear or doubt. For years, she had buried her pain beneath the weight of her work, building an empire to distract herself from the hole Sophie's absence had left. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, Amanda felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. She scrolled through the search results, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a name that seemed promising. Harper Investigations. Their tagline read, "We find answers when no one else can." Amanda grabbed her phone and dialed the number. A gruff yet professional voice answered on the 3rd ring. "Harper Investigations. This is Detective Harper speaking." "This is Amanda Montgomery," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. "I need your help with something personal." As she explained her situation, Amanda's mind drifted back to Emily's face, her hazel eyes, and that pendant. She didn't know where this road would lead, but one thing was certain. She was done living in the shadows of unanswered questions. Whatever it took, Amanda would uncover the truth. Amanda couldn't sleep that night. The image of Emily's face and the pendant that hung around her neck consumed her thoughts. She paced her spacious bedroom, her reflection in the tall glass windows revealing a woman who seemed far older than her 48 years. For so long, Amanda had been in control of her business, her public image, her life. But now, her world felt shaken, and she wasn't sure how to steady it. The next morning, Amanda called Harper Investigations again. Detective Harper had agreed to meet her in person, and she felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. If there was even the slightest chance that Emily was Sophie, Amanda needed to know. The meeting took place in a small, dimly lit office on the Lower East Side. Harper, a man in his mid-50s with a worn leather jacket and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened intently as Amanda recounted everything: the disappearance, the years of fruitless searching, and finally, the encounter with Emily. "This isn't my first missing person case," Harper said, scribbling notes on a yellow notepad. "But I'll be honest with you, Ms. Montgomery. After 18 years, it's rare to find answers. Are you prepared for the possibility that this lead might not pan out?" "I've lived with uncertainty for nearly 2 decades, Detective," Amanda replied, her voice steady. "I can handle disappointment. What I can't handle is not trying." Harper nodded. "Fair enough. I'll start by looking into Emily's background. If she was raised in an orphanage, there should be records. Do you have a photo of her?" Amanda hesitated. She hadn't taken a picture of Emily at the restaurant. It felt too invasive. "No, but I know where she works. The Belmond on 5th Avenue. "That'll help," Harper said, closing his notebook. "Give me a few days. I'll let you know what I find." As Amanda left the office, she felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, she was doing something tangible to confront the pain that had haunted her. But the relief was short-lived. The thought of facing another dead end gnawed at her resolve. Meanwhile, Emily was oblivious to the storm brewing around her. At 23, her life was simple and unremarkable. She lived in a small studio apartment in Queens, juggling shifts at the Belmond while attending night classes in social work. She had always felt a quiet yearning to help others, perhaps because of her own childhood spent in the foster system. Though she had no memories of her biological parents, she carried a vague sense of longing, like a puzzle missing a crucial piece. Her only tangible connection to her past was the pendant she wore every day. It had been with her for as long as she could remember, a source of comfort during sleepless nights in the orphanage. The thought that it might hold answers had crossed her mind countless times, but she had never pursued it. What was the point? The past, she believed, was better left alone. That evening, as Emily wiped down tables after the dinner rush, her coworker Sarah leaned over the bar, smirking. "So, what was the deal with that woman last night? She looked at you like she'd seen a ghost." Emily laughed, though the memory of Amanda's intense gaze lingered in her mind. "I don't know. She asked about my necklace. It was weird." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" "She seemed emotional, like it meant something to her." Emily shrugged. "I guess I reminded her of someone." "Well, she left a massive tip, so I'd say it was a good weird," Sarah teased, tossing a rag over her shoulder. Emily smiled but didn't respond. Something about Amanda's demeanor had stayed with her, a mix of sadness, hope, and a desperation she couldn't quite place. 2 days later, Harper called Amanda with an update. "I dug up some preliminary records on Emily," he said. "She was found in a park in Queens when she was about 5 years old. No ID, no birth certificate, just the necklace around her neck." Amanda's heart skipped a beat. What else? She was taken to a local orphanage and later adopted by a woman named Helen Roberts. Helen passed away a few years ago, leaving Emily on her own. Amanda clutched her phone tightly. Does she remember anything about her life before the orphanage? Not much, but the necklace is unique. It could be the key to proving her identity. I'll keep digging, but you might want to get close to her in the meantime. Build trust. Amanda hesitated. I don't want to scare her off. Then tread carefully, Harper advised. But don't wait too long. If she really is your daughter, she deserves to know. That evening, Amanda returned to the Belmond, her heart pounding as she walked through the glass doors. Emily was behind the bar, chatting with a customer. When she noticed Amanda, her expression flickered with recognition. "Back so soon?" Emily asked, a hint of curiosity in her tone. Amanda smiled nervously. "The food was excellent last time. I couldn't stay away." Emily laughed softly, wiping her hands on a towel. "Well, let me know if you want a recommendation." "I actually wanted to ask if you'd have coffee with me sometime," Amanda said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know it's unusual, but I'd like to get to know you better." Emily tilted her head, clearly taken aback. "Why?" Amanda hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say you remind me of someone very important to me." Emily studied her for a moment before nodding cautiously. "All right, coffee sounds good." As Amanda walked out of the restaurant, a small flicker of hope bloomed in her chest. She didn't know where this journey would lead, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was moving toward something real. Amanda's footsteps echoed through the quiet lobby of Harper Investigations. The office was tucked into an unassuming building on the Lower East Side, a stark contrast to the polished skyscrapers she was accustomed to. The simplicity of the space felt oddly reassuring, as though it were a place where real answers could finally emerge from the fog of her doubts. Detective Harper greeted her with a firm handshake. His weathered face and sharp blue eyes spoke of years spent piecing together the lives of others. "Ms. Montgomery," he said, motioning her to a seat across from his desk. "Tell me what brought you here." Amanda didn't waste time. She recounted everything: the disappearance of Sophie, the years of searching, the despair that had gnawed at her soul, and the shocking moment when she saw the pendant on Emily's neck. Her voice wavered as she described Sophie's smile, her laugh, and the last time she held her tiny hand. Harper listened without interrupting, his pen moving steadily across a notepad when she finished. There was a moment of silence. Harper leaned back in his chair, folding his hands over his chest. "This isn't the first missing person case I've worked," he said, his tone measured. "But 18 years is a long time, Ms. Montgomery. Are you sure you're ready for what we might uncover? The truth isn't always what we hope for." Amanda nodded, her expression resolute. "I've lived with the unknown for too long. I'd rather face a painful truth than continue living in limbo." Harper studied her for a moment before nodding. "All right, let's start with Emily. If she was raised in an orphanage, there will be records. Do you know where she works?" "Yes," Amanda said. "She's a waitress at the Belmond on 5th Avenue. "That's a good lead," Harper replied. "I'll look into her background, where she was found, any adoption history and medical records if I can get access. It might take a few days, but I'll be thorough." Amanda hesitated. "What about the pendant?" "It's identical to the one I gave Sophie." Harper picked up his pen again. "I'll need a photo of it, along with any other details you can provide. Unique items like that can sometimes lead to surprising connections." Amanda fished her phone from her purse and scrolled through her gallery until she found a picture of her pendant. She handed it to Harper, who examined it closely. "This engraving, it's intricate. Custom work, I assume?" "Yes," Amanda said softly. "I had it made for Sophie's 5th birthday. It's one of a kind." Harper nodded. "That helps if Emily's pendant matches this exactly. It's a significant lead. Do you have any other photos of Sophie or anything else that might aid the investigation?" Amanda hesitated, her chest tightening. She hadn't looked at Sophie's pictures in years. The memories were too raw, but if it would help, she'd face the pain. "I'll bring you what I have." "Good," Harper said, closing his notepad. "One more thing. You should know that building trust with Emily will be crucial, if she really is Sophie. She'll need time to process this. You can't rush it." Amanda's expression softened, and for the first time since stepping into the office, her voice wavered. "I just want to know if she's my daughter. Detective. After that, it's up to her." Harper leaned forward, his gaze steady. "You're doing the right thing. Let me handle the digging. I'll call you as soon as I have something concrete." Leaving the office, Amanda felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Harper's warning about the truth echoed in her mind. She had prepared herself for disappointment before, but this time felt different. Emily's face, her mannerisms, and that pendant. Everything pointed to something more than coincidence. Over the next few days, Amanda threw herself into work to distract herself. Meetings, calls, and contract negotiations kept her occupied, but her thoughts always drifted back to Emily. She replayed their brief conversations, wondering if the young woman had sensed the depth of her interest. Meanwhile, Harper wasted no time. His investigation led him to Queens, where he visited the small orphanage that had taken Emily in nearly 2 decades ago. The matron, an elderly woman with kind eyes, remembered Emily well. She was a quiet child, the matron recalled, pulling out a dusty ledger. She didn't speak much at first. We found her in Flushing Meadows Park, wearing that little necklace. Poor thing had no ID, no family, nothing. Harper's pen flew across his notepad. Do you know how she ended up there? Did anyone see who left her? The matron shook her head. No witnesses. The police searched for a while, but they didn't find anything. She was adopted a year later by a woman named Helen Roberts. Helen was a lovely lady. She doted on Emily until she passed away a few years ago. Harper thanked the matron and left the orphanage with a stack of photocopied records. Back in his office, he compared Emily's timeline with the details Amanda had provided. The pieces didn't quite fit yet, but the pendant stood out. It was too unique to ignore. That evening, Harper called Amanda. "I've got some preliminary findings," he said. Emily was found abandoned in a park in Queens when she was about 5 years old. She had no identification, just the necklace. Amanda's breath caught. "That's the same age Sophie was when she disappeared." "Exactly," Harper said. "I'm still digging, but this is promising. I'll follow up on her adoption records and see if there's any way to connect her to your family." "Thank you." "Detective," Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion, "please keep me updated." As she hung up the phone, Amanda stared at the pendant in her hand. Her heart swelled with cautious hope. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had in years. Whatever it took, she would find the truth. Amanda sat in her office, staring blankly at the stack of papers on her desk. The usual buzz of her assistant and the hum of phones ringing outside felt distant. Harper's call the previous night had left her in a haze of emotions: hope, fear, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. The idea that Emily might truly be Sophie was becoming more plausible with every piece of information the detective uncovered. The pendant, the timeline, the fact that Emily had been found with no family. All of it pointed to a truth Amanda had dared to dream of but never believed she'd find. Her fingers traced the edge of her own pendant, the weight of its half-heart pressing against her palm. It was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was the last thread connecting her to Sophie. But the questions lingered. What had happened that day in the park? Who had taken Sophie? And why? Amanda's thoughts were interrupted by the buzz of her intercom. "Ms. Montgomery," her assistant's voice chimed. "Detective Harper is here to see you." "Send him in," Amanda said, sitting up and smoothing the creases from her blouse. Harper entered with a file folder tucked under his arm. His expression was serious, though Amanda couldn't tell if it was good or bad news. "Detective," she greeted, motioning for him to sit. "What did you find?" Harper opened the folder and laid out a series of photocopies, adoption records, orphanage intake forms, and a photograph of a small girl, her hazel eyes wide and curious. Amanda's breath caught as she stared at the image. "This is Emily when she was first taken in by the orphanage," Harper said. "She was found alone in Flushing Meadows Park, wearing that necklace. No one ever came forward to claim her." Amanda's heart ached as she studied the photo. The girl in the picture looked so much like Sophie at that age. The resemblance was undeniable. "There's more," Harper continued. "I spoke with the matron at the orphanage. She said Emily was quiet, withdrawn, and didn't speak much about her past. She only mentioned being taken to the park by a woman she called Auntie." "Auntie?" Amanda's brow furrowed. Sophie never had an aunt, at least, not one she would have called that. "Could have been someone who took her," Harper suggested. "Maybe a trafficker or someone posing as a caretaker." The word trafficker sent a chill through Amanda. The idea that her daughter had been caught in such a horrifying situation made her stomach turn. "Did Emily ever talk about what happened to her after she was taken?" Harper shook his head. "Not according to the records. The matron said she had nightmares sometimes, but she never explained them. It's possible she doesn't remember much, or she's blocked it out entirely." Amanda sat back in her chair, her mind racing. What about her adoption? You said she was taken in by someone named Helen Roberts. Correct, Harper said, flipping to another page. Helen adopted Emily about a year after she was found. She was a single woman, never married, and worked as a school teacher by all accounts. She was a loving mother to Emily until she passed away from cancer 3 years ago. Amanda exhaled slowly, relief mingling with sadness. At least Emily had known love and stability, even if it had come from someone else. There's still one piece I can't figure out, Harper said. That pendant, it's too unique to be a coincidence. But there's no record of how Emily ended up with it. I'm looking into jewelers who might have crafted it, but that'll take time. Amanda nodded, her fingers tightening around her own pendant. It's identical to mine. There's no doubt in my mind. Harper leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Ms. Montgomery, I need you to be prepared. The pieces are falling into place, but there's still a lot we don't know. Emily might not remember you. She might not even believe you at first. I understand, Amanda said, though the thought of rejection stung. I'm not trying to force anything on her. I just want to know the truth. Harper's phone buzzed, interrupting the conversation. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Looks like the orphanage director found something else in their records. I'll follow up and keep you updated. As Harper left, Amanda sat alone in her office, staring at the photograph of Emily. For the first time in years, she felt like she was on the brink of an answer, but the thought of what that answer might reveal terrified her. That evening, Amanda returned to the Belmond. She didn't plan on approaching Emily again. She didn't want to overwhelm her. Instead, she sat at a quiet corner table, observing as Emily moved between customers. Emily seemed tired but cheerful, chatting with patrons and flashing a polite smile. Amanda couldn't help but notice the faint dimple on her left cheek, a trait Sophie had inherited from her father. As Emily passed by Amanda's table, she paused, her expression softening. You're back, she said, a note of surprise in her voice. Amanda smiled warmly. The food here is hard to resist. Emily chuckled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Well, let me know if you need anything. Before Amanda could respond, Emily's necklace slipped from beneath her collar, the half-heart pendant catching the light. Amanda's breath hitched as she fought the urge to say something. Instead, she watched as Emily moved on to another table, her heart heavy with unspoken words. Back at home, Amanda pulled out a box from the back of her closet. Inside were photographs of Sophie, along with drawings, school projects, and the tiny dress she had worn on her 5th birthday. Amanda held a picture of Sophie up to the light, her hands trembling. She's out there, Amanda whispered to herself. Amanda, tears streaming down her face. I know it's her. Whatever the cost, she would uncover the truth. Amanda spent the next few days in a constant state of anticipation. Harper's updates were promising, yet incomplete, leaving her in a limbo of hope and doubt. The emotional toll was heavier than she had anticipated. To steady herself, she called on the one person she thought might offer some perspective. Her sister, Regina Montgomery. Regina arrived at Amanda's penthouse late that afternoon, her arrival announced by the sharp click of designer heels against the marble floor. Regina was the picture of elegance, her perfectly tailored dress and flawless makeup betraying none of the bitterness Amanda knew lingered beneath her polished exterior. Despite their familial bond, their relationship had always been complicated, colored by competition and envy. Amanda, Regina said warmly, kissing her sister on both cheeks. You look stressed. Work giving you trouble again? Amanda forced a polite smile. Something like that. Would you like some tea or wine? Wine, Regina said with a dramatic sigh as she draped her purse over a chair. It's been one of those weeks. Amanda poured 2 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc and handed one to Regina. She hesitated, unsure how to broach the topic on her mind. Regina noticed immediately, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. You didn't call me here to chat about wine, did you? Regina asked, taking a slow sip. What's going on? Amanda set her glass down and folded her hands on the table. I think I might have found Sophie. Regina's reaction was immediate. A flicker of something unrecognizable flashed in her eyes before she quickly masked it with surprise. Sophie, she echoed, feigning confusion. Amanda, what are you talking about? It's been 18 years. I know, Amanda said firmly. "But I met someone. Emily. She's a waitress at a restaurant I went to recently. She has Sophie's pendant, Regina, the one I gave her on her 5th birthday." Regina's laugh was sharp, almost dismissive. "Amanda, do you know how many people buy pendants like that? Jewelry isn't exactly unique." "This one is," Amanda insisted. "I had it custom made. It's identical to mine." Regina set her glass down, her expression shifting to something more sympathetic. "I understand why you'd want to believe that, but you've been down this road before. Remember when you thought you saw her in that photo from Chicago? Or the girl in Houston?" "This is different," Amanda said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've hired a private investigator. He's already found out that Emily was abandoned in a park at the same age. Sophie disappeared." "Everything lines up." Regina leaned back, crossing her arms. "And you're sure this investigator isn't just telling you what you want to hear? People love to take advantage of desperation, Amanda." "It's not desperation," Amanda shot back, her tone sharpening. "This is real. I can feel it." For a moment, Regina said nothing, her eyes fixed on Amanda as though weighing her next words carefully. Then she sighed, softening her expression. "I just don't want you to get hurt again. You've spent so many years chasing ghosts, Amanda. What if this is just another false lead?" "If it is," Amanda said quietly, "then at least I'll know I tried." Regina reached across the table, placing a manicured hand over Amanda's. "All right. If you're convinced, then I'll support you. But promise me you'll be cautious. Don't let this girl take advantage of your emotions." Amanda nodded, though Regina's words didn't sit well with her. Something about her sister's tone felt off, too rehearsed, too calculated. But Amanda pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to her own paranoia. Later that evening, Amanda found herself replaying the conversation in her mind. Regina had always been skeptical about the search for Sophie, urging Amanda to move on and focus on her career. While Amanda understood her sister's pragmatic nature, she couldn't shake the feeling that Regina's concern had always been laced with something darker. Their childhood had been riddled with competition, especially after their parents' death when Amanda was 23 and Regina was 20. Amanda had stepped up as the responsible older sister, inheriting the family business and steering it to success. Regina, on the other hand, had resented being in her shadow, her charm and beauty often overshadowed by Amanda's determination and intelligence. As Amanda flipped through old photo albums that night, she paused at a picture of the two of them in their teens. Regina's smile was radiant, but Amanda remembered the day clearly. How Regina had thrown a tantrum moments before because Amanda had been praised for a school award. The memory felt heavier now, weighted by a suspicion Amanda didn't want to acknowledge. Meanwhile, across town, Regina sat in her own lavish apartment, swirling her wine glass as she stared out at the city lights. Her conversation with Amanda had left her unsettled. She had spent years carefully burying the truth about Sophie, constructing a web of lies so intricate that even she had started to believe them. If Amanda was right, if this Emily girl really was Sophie, everything Regina had built could come crashing down. The thought made her stomach churn. Regina drained her glass and picked up her phone. After a moment of hesitation, she dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "It's me," she said when the line connected. "We need to talk now." Back at her penthouse, Amanda's phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was Harper. "I've got more information," he said. "Can we meet tomorrow? There's something I think you need to see." Amanda's heart leapt, hope surging through her. "Of course. What time?" 10 a.m. at my office," Harper replied. "And Amanda, this might confirm some of your suspicions." As Amanda hung up, her thoughts returned to Regina. Something wasn't adding up, and Amanda was determined to find out what. Amanda arrived at Harper's office the following morning, her mind buzzing with anticipation and unease. The previous night's conversation with Regina had left a sour taste in her mouth, but Harper's call had renewed her determination. She clutched Sophie's photo in her hand, a tangible reminder of why she had to keep pushing forward. Harper greeted her with a curt nod, motioning for her to sit. His desk was cluttered with papers, files, and a steaming cup of coffee. "Morning, Mrs. Montgomery. Thanks for coming on short notice." "What did you find?" Amanda asked, unable to mask the urgency in her tone. Harper opened a folder and slid a document across the desk. This is Emily's orphanage intake report. It's basic, but it confirms what we already know. She was found alone in Flushing Meadows Park when she was about 5 years old. No witnesses, no leads, just the pendant around her neck. Amanda leaned forward, her eyes scanning the page. It was surreal to read the clinical description of a child's abandonment, knowing it might be about her daughter. But that's not all, Harper continued. He pulled out another sheet, this one a photocopy of an adoption record. This is from when Helen Roberts adopted Emily. It mentions a unique identifier. The pendant, the social worker who oversaw the case noted it as the only personal item Emily had when she arrived at the orphanage. Amanda's chest tightened. That pendant. It's the key, isn't it? It's certainly a strong lead, Harper agreed. But there's one more thing. He pulled out a grainy photograph. Clearly taken years ago, it showed a small, frightened-looking girl clutching a blanket. Around her neck, the half-heart pendant gleamed. Amanda gasped. That's Sophie. Emily. It's Emily when she first arrived at the orphanage, Harper clarified. The resemblance is striking, but I know you need more than that. I've started reaching out to jewelers in the area to track where the pendant was made. If we can trace its origin, we might get the confirmation you're looking for. Amanda nodded, though her mind was already racing ahead. Thank you, Detective. You've done more than I could have hoped for. Harper leaned back in his chair, his expression cautious. There's still a lot we don't know, Miss Montgomery. This is a step in the right direction. But you'll need to tread carefully with Emily. If she is your daughter, she's been living a completely different life. This won't be easy for her. I understand, Amanda said, though her resolve was unwavering. I'll do whatever it takes. Later that evening, Amanda found herself at the Belmont once again, unable to stay away. She watched Emily from her usual corner table, her heart aching with every small gesture that reminded her of Sophie. The way Emily tucked her hair behind her ear, the soft lilt in her voice. It all felt so familiar. As Emily approached her table, Amanda tried to compose herself. Good evening, Emily, she said with a warm smile. Back again, Emily asked, a teasing note in her voice. You're becoming a regular, Amanda chuckled softly. I suppose I am. The food here is exceptional, and the service is even better. Emily smiled, her dimple appearing briefly. Well, let me know if you need recommendations. Actually, Amanda began, her tone shifting. I was wondering if we could talk. Outside of work, I mean. Emily blinked, surprised. Talk? About what? Amanda hesitated, choosing her words carefully. You remind me of someone very important to me. I'd like to get to know you better. Emily's expression softened, though uncertainty flickered in her hazel eyes. I don't know. That's kind of unusual. I understand, Amanda said quickly. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable, it's just, I think there's a connection between us. Something I can't explain. Emily looked down, fiddling with the edge of her apron. I don't know what you mean. Amanda's gaze fell to Emily's pendant, which had slipped out from beneath her shirt. It gleamed under the restaurant's warm lighting, a mirror image of her own. She fought the urge to reach out, to touch it, to say something that might scare Emily away. Please, Amanda said gently. Just one coffee. If you're uncomfortable, I won't bother you again. Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, one coffee. Amanda smiled, relief washing over her. Thank you. You won't regret it. The following day, Amanda met Emily at a small cafe near the restaurant. The atmosphere was cozy and unassuming, a far cry from Amanda's usual haunts. Emily seemed nervous, fidgeting with her pendant as she sat across from Amanda. So, Emily began, her tone guarded. What's this about? Amanda took a deep breath. I don't know how to say this without sounding strange, but I think you might be my daughter. Emily froze, her eyes widening. Your daughter? Amanda nodded, her voice steady. 18 years ago, my daughter Sophie disappeared. She was 5 years old, and she was wearing a pendant just like yours when she vanished. I've spent every day since then looking for her. And then I met you. Emily's hand instinctively went to her pendant. This, I've had it forever. It's all I have from whoever left me at that park. I had this one made for Sophie, Amanda said, holding up her own pendant. It's identical to yours because they were a pair. Emily stared at the two pendants, her face a mix of confusion and disbelief. I don't remember anything before the orphanage. How could I be your daughter? I don't know, Amanda admitted. But I'm working with a detective. We're trying to piece everything together. All I ask is that you give me a chance to prove it. Emily looked away, her expression conflicted. This is a lot to take in. I understand, Amanda said softly. Take all the time you need, but please don't shut me out. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'll think about it. As they left the cafe, Amanda felt the faintest flicker of hope. It was a fragile thing, but it was enough to keep her moving forward. The days following her conversation with Emily were some of the longest of Amanda's life. Though Emily had agreed to consider the possibility of their connection, her guarded demeanor left Amanda on edge. She couldn't shake the fear that Emily might pull away before the truth could be confirmed. Harper's investigations had made progress, but they still lacked the definitive proof Amanda needed to bridge the gap between herself and Emily. That proof, Amanda believed, lay in the pendant. It was more than a symbol. It was a key, one that could unlock the truth about Emily's past. Harper called Amanda one morning, his tone brisk but laced with a subtle excitement. I've got something for you, Ms. Montgomery. Can you meet me in an hour? Amanda didn't hesitate. I'll be there. An hour later, she stepped into Harper's office, her heart pounding as he handed her a manila folder. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harper gestured for her to sit. I tracked down the jeweler who made the pendants. His name is Victor Belrose, and he remembers crafting them. He kept detailed records and... Harper flipped open the folder, revealing a photocopy of a receipt. This is the receipt from your order. It matches the engravings on the pendants, including the date, Sophie's 5th birthday. Amanda stared at the paper, her hands trembling. The familiar details leapt off the page. The date, the engraving specifications, even the handwritten note requesting a delicate chain for a child. It was irrefutable. This proves it, Amanda said, her voice breaking. It proves that Emily is Sophie. Not quite, Harper interjected gently. It proves that Emily's pendant is the same one you had made for Sophie, but we still need to connect the dots. How it ended up with her and what happened in the years between. Amanda nodded, wiping away a tear. You're right. What's next? I've reached out to a contact in the NYPD to see if there are any old case files from when Emily was found, Harper said. And I'm looking into reports of child trafficking in the area around the time Sophie disappeared. If there's a connection, we'll find it. Later that evening, Amanda called Emily. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she held the phone. Emily, it's Amanda. I was wondering if you'd like to meet again. There's something important I'd like to show you. There was a pause on the other end before Emily replied, her tone cautious. All right. When? Tomorrow if you're free, Amanda said. There's a cafe near the park. It's quiet, and I think it would be a good place to talk. Emily agreed, though her hesitation was clear. The next day, Amanda arrived at the cafe early, clutching the manila folder Harper had given her. She didn't want to overwhelm Emily, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Emily arrived shortly after, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. She slid into the seat across from Amanda, her pendant catching the light as she settled in. You said there was something you wanted to show me, Emily asked, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. Amanda nodded, pulling the folder onto the table. Before I show you, I need you to know that I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I just want to give you the information I've found and let you decide what to do with it. Emily's brow furrowed, but she nodded. Okay. Amanda opened the folder, revealing the photocopy of the receipt and a photograph of Sophie wearing the pendant. This is the receipt for the pendant you're wearing. I had it made for my daughter's 5th birthday. And this, she slid the photo closer to Emily, is Sophie. Emily stared at the photo, her expression unreadable. She looks a little like me. She doesn't just look like you, Amanda said gently. I believe she is you. Emily's gaze flicked between the photo and the receipt, her fingers grazing the edge of the pendant around her neck. How can you be so sure? Because I had this pendant custom made, Amanda explained. There's no other one like it, and the timing, the age you were found, the circumstances, it all lines up. Emily leaned back in her chair, her hands gripping the pendant as though it were the only thing tethering her to reality. But I don't remember anything about being Sophie. I don't even know if that's my name." Amanda reached across the table, her voice soft. "You were so young when it happened. It's not unusual for memories to fade or get buried, but I've been working with a detective to piece everything together. There are still gaps, but the evidence we have so far points to one thing. You're my daughter." Emily's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly blinked them away. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," Amanda said. "I just wanted you to know the truth, or at least as much of it as we've been able to uncover. This is your story, Emily, or Sophie. I don't want to take that from you. I just want to be part of it. If you'll let me." For a long moment, Emily said nothing. She stared at the photo of Sophie, then at Amanda, as though trying to reconcile the two realities that had collided in her life. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need time." Amanda nodded, her heart aching but understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." As Emily left the cafe, the pendant still clutched in her hand, Amanda felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in 18 years, it felt like she was walking toward something real. Emily's mind was a storm of thoughts as she walked away from the cafe. The photograph of Sophie haunted her. It was like looking into a mirror, but the reflection came from a life she couldn't remember. She fingered the pendant around her neck, its familiar weight suddenly feeling heavier. Could Amanda really be her mother? And if so, how had she ended up alone in that park all those years ago? Back in her small apartment, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the pendant. Her memories of childhood were fragmented at best, flashes of faces she couldn't place, voices that felt distant and muffled. The only constant had been the pendant, the one thing that had always felt like hers. Now, it seemed to belong to a story much larger than she had ever imagined. Meanwhile, Amanda sat in her penthouse, holding the same photograph she had shown Emily. Her conversation with Emily had left her hopeful, but the pain of not being able to embrace her daughter was palpable. She couldn't help but wonder how much of Sophie still existed within Emily, and whether they could ever rebuild the bond that had been so cruelly severed. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Harper. "I've got something new," he said, his voice steady, "and you're not going to like it." Amanda's stomach dropped. "What is it?" "There's a potential link between Sophie's disappearance and someone close to you," Harper continued. "I've been digging through old reports, and a name popped up. Regina Montgomery." Amanda froze. "Regina, my sister. What are you talking about?" Harper sighed. "I found a record of a call made to the police a few days after Sophie went missing. The caller reported seeing a woman matching Regina's description, arguing with another person in a car near the park where Sophie disappeared. The case file didn't go anywhere at the time, but given the connection, it's worth looking into." Amanda's hand tightened around her phone. "Are you saying Regina might have had something to do with Sophie's disappearance?" "I'm saying it's suspicious," Harper said carefully. "I need to dig deeper, but it's possible she knows more than she's let on." Amanda felt a surge of anger and disbelief. Regina had been her confidant in the aftermath of Sophie's disappearance, the one person she had leaned on during those dark days. Could it all have been a lie? "Keep investigating," Amanda said, her voice tight. "I need to know the truth." That evening, Amanda invited Regina over, determined to confront her. She kept her composure as Regina walked into the penthouse, all smiles and charm, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath Amanda's calm exterior. "Wine again?" Regina asked as she settled into the living room. "Or something stronger tonight?" "No drinks," Amanda said, her tone clipped. She stood across from Regina, arms crossed. "I have something to ask you." Regina raised an eyebrow, her expression bemused. "All right, what's this about?" "It's about Sophie," Amanda said, her voice steady but cold. "And what you know about her disappearance." Regina's smile faltered. "What I know, Amanda? What are you talking about?" "I spoke to a detective," Amanda continued. "He found a report about a woman matching your description near the park where Sophie disappeared. Care to explain?" Regina's eyes widened, and for a moment, Amanda thought she saw a flicker of fear, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by indignation. "Are you accusing me of something?" Regina snapped. "Amanda, this is ridiculous. I was just as devastated as you were when Sophie went missing. How could you even think? Don't, Amanda interrupted, her voice sharp. Don't act like the victim here. If there's even a chance you know something, anything about what happened to Sophie, I need to know. Regina stood, her face a mask of righteous anger. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through. You think I had something to do with my own niece disappearing? Amanda met her gaze, unflinching. I don't know what to think anymore, but I do know you're hiding something. I can see it in your eyes, Regina scoffed, grabbing her purse. I don't have to listen to this. Call me when you've come to your senses. She stormed out, leaving Amanda standing alone, her heart pounding. The confrontation had only deepened her suspicions. Regina was hiding something. Amanda was sure of it. The next morning, Harper called with another update. I traced the car mentioned in the report, he said. It was registered to one of Regina's old business partners, a man named Victor Mendez. He has a record for fraud and some shady ties to trafficking rings in the 90s. Amanda felt a wave of nausea. Do you think he was involved in Sophie's disappearance? It's possible, Harper said. If Regina was working with him, even indirectly, it could explain a lot. I'm tracking him down now. We might be able to get some answers. Amanda closed her eyes, her mind reeling. The idea that her own sister might have been complicit in Sophie's disappearance was almost too much to bear. But the pieces were starting to fit, and Amanda knew she couldn't stop now, not when the truth was finally within reach. Across town, Regina sat in her apartment, pacing the floor. Her mind raced as she replayed her confrontation with Amanda. The memories she had tried so hard to bury were clawing their way to the surface, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. When the line connected, she spoke in a low, urgent tone. Victor, we have a problem. Amanda spent the rest of the day processing Harper's revelations. The pieces were falling into place, but they painted a picture far darker than she could have imagined. Regina, her sister, her confidant during Sophie's disappearance, might have been involved all along. The betrayal, if true, was almost as painful as losing Sophie herself. That evening, Amanda made up her mind. She couldn't wait for Harper to gather more evidence. She needed answers directly from Regina. It was time to confront her sister again. But this time, Amanda wasn't coming unprepared. The next morning, Amanda arrived unannounced at Regina's apartment. The building was as opulent as Amanda expected. Her sister had always enjoyed the finer things in life. She knocked sharply on the door, her heart pounding as she waited. When Regina opened the door, her surprise quickly turned to irritation. Amanda, to what do I owe the pleasure? I thought we were done with this nonsense. We're far from done, Amanda said, stepping past Regina into the living room. We need to talk, Regina sighed, closing the door. I have a busy day ahead. So if you could make this quick— No, Amanda interrupted, her voice firm. I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. About Sophie. About that day. About Victor Mendez. At the mention of Victor's name, Regina's expression faltered. It was brief, just a flicker of something, but Amanda caught it. I don't know what you're talking about, Regina said, her voice cool but defensive. Victor and I haven't spoken in years. He has nothing to do with any of this. Don't lie to me, Amanda snapped, stepping closer. I've spoken to Harper. He found the report about a woman matching your description arguing with someone near the park. That someone was Victor, wasn't it? Regina's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Were you working with him? Amanda pressed. Did you have something to do with Sophie disappearing? Regina's eyes flashed with anger. You're out of your mind, Amanda. Do you hear yourself? You're accusing your own sister of— what? Kidnapping, selling your daughter. That's insane. Is it? Amanda said, her voice rising. Because every piece of evidence points back to you, and you're doing a terrible job of convincing me otherwise. Regina's composure cracked. She turned away, her hands gripping the back of a chair as she spoke. I didn't mean for it to happen. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Amanda's breath hitched. What do you mean? Regina turned back to face her, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time, Amanda saw something she hadn't expected. Guilt. I was jealous, Regina admitted, her voice shaking. You had everything, Amanda. The perfect husband, the perfect daughter, the perfect life, and I was just the sister living in your shadow. So you what? Amanda demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief. You took Sophie to get back at me. I didn't take her, Regina shot back. I wanted to scare you, to make you see what it was like to feel powerless for once. Victor owed me a favor, so I asked him to create a distraction, take her for a little while, just to teach you a lesson. Amanda's legs felt like they might give out beneath her. You used my daughter to teach me a lesson. What kind of monster are you? I didn't know it would go this far, Regina cried. Victor was supposed to bring her back after a few hours, but he didn't. He disappeared. And Sophie, she was just gone. Amanda stared at her sister, her mind reeling. The betrayal was more devastating than she had imagined. Why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Regina shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I was scared. I thought if I told you, you'd never forgive me. And then it was too late. Years passed, and I thought it was better if you didn't know. Better for who? Amanda shouted, her voice cracking. You let me suffer for 18 years. You let me think Sophie was gone forever while you sat back and did nothing. Regina sank into a chair, sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Amanda's fists clenched at her sides. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't erase the pain you caused. You destroyed our family. There was a long silence as Amanda struggled to regain her composure. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold and steely. I'm calling Harper and the police. You're going to tell them everything. Regina looked up, her face pale. Amanda, please, save it, Amanda snapped. You don't get to beg for forgiveness, not after what you've done. Amanda left Regina's apartment, her emotions a storm of anger, grief, and determination. As she stepped into the street, her phone buzzed. It was Harper. I've tracked down Victor Mendez, he said. He's in New Jersey, and I think he might talk. You should come. Amanda's voice was firm. I'll be there. And Harper, Regina confessed. She's been lying all these years. Harper paused. I had a feeling. We'll make sure she faces the consequences. But first, let's find Victor. He might have the final piece of the puzzle, as Amanda hailed a cab. Her resolve hardened. For 18 years, she had lived in the shadow of Sophie's disappearance. Now, she was closer than ever to the truth, and she wouldn't stop until she found it. Amanda's hands gripped the edges of her seat as the cab sped toward New Jersey. Harper's call had reignited her determination, but it also stirred a storm of questions she wasn't sure she was ready to face. If Victor Mendez truly had the answers, what would they reveal about Sophie's fate? And could Amanda bear to hear it? When she arrived at the dingy motel Harper had directed her to, he was already waiting outside, leaning against his car with a grim expression. He's inside, Harper said, gesturing toward one of the rooms. But I need you to let me handle the questioning. People like Victor don't respond well to pressure. Amanda nodded, though her nerves were raw. Just get the truth out of him. Harper led the way to the door. Knocking twice before it creaked open, Victor Mendez stood in the doorway, his wiry frame and sunken eyes giving him the appearance of a man who had lived a hard life. He glanced at Amanda, his face tightening with unease. This is Amanda Montgomery, Harper said, his tone firm. She has questions, and you're going to answer them. Victor's gaze flicked between Harper and Amanda, before he stepped aside, letting them in. The room was sparse, with peeling wallpaper and a lingering smell of mildew. Victor sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his hands together nervously. I don't know why you're here, Victor muttered. I don't know anything. Cut the act, Harper said sharply. We know you were involved in Sophie Montgomery's disappearance 18 years ago. Regina already confessed. We just want the truth. Victor's shoulders sagged, and he let out a bitter laugh. Regina, of course she threw me under the bus. Tell us what happened, Amanda demanded, her voice trembling. Where is my daughter? Victor hesitated, his eyes darting toward the door as if considering an escape. Harper stepped closer, his presence imposing. You're not walking out of here until you talk. So start talking. Victor sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Fine. Regina hired me to scare you, all right. She said she wanted to teach you a lesson, make you feel vulnerable. I thought it was stupid, but she paid well. Amanda's stomach churned. And Sophie, what did you do to her? I didn't hurt her, Victor said quickly, his voice defensive. I swear I was supposed to pick her up from the park and keep her for a few hours, then drop her off somewhere safe. But something went wrong. What went wrong? Harper pressed. Victor swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to the floor. Someone else showed up, a man. I don't know who he was, but he said he had a better plan. He offered me more money to hand the girl over to him. I didn't ask questions. I took the cash and walked away. Amanda's knees felt weak. You handed her over to a stranger, you just gave her away. I didn't think, Victor stammered, his voice breaking. I didn't know it would end like this. I thought he was going to bring her back. Harper's voice was cold. Who was the man? What do you know about him? Victor shook his head. I never got his name. He was tall, dark-haired, wore a suit, looked like he had money. That's all I remember. Amanda's heart pounded. And Sophie, what happened to her after that? Victor hesitated, his face pale. I don't know. I heard rumors later about trafficking rings, kids being sold overseas, but I swear, I don't know what happened to her. Amanda's breath hitched, and she clenched her fists, fighting back the wave of nausea threatening to overwhelm her. You're lying, she said, her voice trembling. You have to know something. I swear I don't, Victor cried. If I did, I'd tell you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Harper stepped forward, his jaw tight. You're going to write down everything you remember about that man, every detail, no matter how small. And if you're lying, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life behind bars. Victor nodded shakily, grabbing a piece of paper from the nightstand as he scribbled down his recollections. Amanda turned away, tears streaming down her face. Harper placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll find him, he said quietly. We're closer than we've ever been. That evening, Amanda sat in her car outside her penthouse, staring blankly at the dashboard. Victor's words replayed in her mind, each one a dagger to her heart. The image of a stranger taking Sophie, her innocent face disappearing into the arms of a man with cruel intentions, was more than she could bear. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Emily. Amanda. Emily's voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. Can we meet again? I've been thinking about everything and I have questions. Amanda wiped her tears, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Of course, tell me where, and I'll be there. They met at a park bench under the glow of streetlights, the air crisp with the scent of autumn leaves. Emily sat with her arms wrapped around herself, her expression conflicted. I don't know what to believe, Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can't stop thinking about the pendant, about the photo you showed me. Amanda reached into her bag and pulled out the photograph again, placing it gently in Emily's hands. This is you, she said softly. I know it is. Emily stared at the photo, her fingers trembling. If what you're saying is true, if I'm Sophie, then what happened to me? How did I end up in that park? I don't have all the answers yet, Amanda admitted, her voice breaking. But I promise you, I won't stop until I do. You deserve to know the truth. We both do. Emily's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, she didn't pull away when Amanda reached out to take her hand. I want to believe you, Emily whispered. I don't know how. We'll figure it out together, Amanda said. I'm not going anywhere. As they sat in the quiet of the park, the distance between them felt smaller than ever, though the road ahead was uncertain. For the first time in years, Amanda felt a spark of hope, a fragile, flickering light in the darkness. Amanda's relief at reconnecting with Emily was short-lived. The looming shadow of her sister's betrayal weighed heavily on her. Victor Mendez had confirmed what she suspected. Regina had orchestrated Sophie's disappearance, a cruel game that spiraled out of control. Yet the full extent of Regina's involvement remained a mystery. Amanda needed to hear it from her sister's own lips. The next morning, Amanda arrived at Regina's apartment unannounced. This time she brought Harper with her. He stood beside her, his expression stoic but watchful, as Amanda knocked on the door. After a tense pause, the door creaked open. Regina appeared, her face pale and drawn, a far cry from her usual polished demeanor. Amanda, Regina said cautiously, her eyes darting to Harper. What are you doing here? And who is this? This is Detective Harper, Amanda said, her tone icy. "He's here to ensure you don't twist the truth any further." Regina's jaw tightened. "I already told you everything I know." "No," Amanda shot back, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "You told me what was convenient for you. Now you're going to tell me everything." Harper followed Amanda, closing the door behind him. Regina crossed her arms, her defensive posture betraying her unease. "Sit down," Amanda ordered, her voice firm. "We're not leaving until I get the truth." Regina hesitated but complied, sinking into an armchair. Amanda remained standing, her arms crossed as she glared at her sister. "Victor told us what happened," Amanda began. "How you hired him to scare me. How he handed Sophie over to a stranger, but there are still gaps. Regina, and I need you to fill them." Regina's face hardened. "I already told you. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought Victor would bring her back. He didn't." "That's not good enough," Amanda snapped. "You don't get to hide behind excuses anymore. My daughter is out there and she deserves justice. You owe me the truth, Regina." Regina's eyes welled with tears, but Amanda refused to feel pity. "Fine," Regina said, her voice cracking. "You want the truth? Here it is." She took a shaky breath, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I was jealous. You had everything. Success. A husband who adored you. And Sophie. You were always the golden child. And I was nothing. Invisible. I wanted to hurt you, to make you feel what I felt every day. So I hired Victor." Her voice wavered as she continued. "I didn't plan for it to go this far. Victor told me he'd take Sophie for a few hours, scare you, and then bring her back. But when he didn't, I panicked. I tried to find him, but he vanished. And then, it was too late." Amanda's chest heaved as she fought to contain her fury. "So you did nothing. For 18 years. You let me believe Sophie was gone forever. You let me suffer while you pretended to care." "I was scared," Regina shouted, her voice rising. "Do you know what it's like to live with that guilt? To wake up every day knowing you ruined your sister's life? I couldn't face it, Amanda. I couldn't face you. You didn't just ruin my life," Amanda said coldly. "You ruined Sophie's. She lost her family, her childhood, everything. And for what? To soothe your ego." Regina's tears fell freely now, but Amanda felt no sympathy. Harper stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Regina, do you know anything about the man Victor handed Sophie to? Anything at all?" Regina shook her head. "Victor never told me his name. He just said it was someone who could handle things. I didn't ask questions." Amanda clenched her fists, her anger threatening to boil over. "You're a coward, Regina. You let your jealousy destroy our family, and now you're hiding behind ignorance. But you can't run from this anymore." Harper nodded. "Regina, I'll be turning over everything we've gathered to the authorities. Your role in Sophie's disappearance won't go unpunished." Regina's face crumpled, but she didn't protest. Amanda turned on her heel, unable to look at her sister any longer. Harper followed her to the door, leaving Regina alone with her guilt. In the car, Amanda stared out the window, her thoughts racing. Harper broke the silence. "We're closer than ever, Amanda. Regina's confession confirms what Victor told us. Now we just need to track down the man who took Sophie." "How?" Amanda asked, her voice hollow. "Victor barely remembers anything about him." Harper's expression was thoughtful. "Traffickers don't work alone. If this man was involved in something larger, there's a good chance we can find records, connections, transactions, anything that points to his identity. It'll take time, but I won't stop digging." Amanda nodded, her resolve hardening. "Neither will I." That evening, Amanda returned to her penthouse, emotionally drained but determined. She called Emily, her heart aching as the phone rang. "Hey," Emily said softly when she picked up. "Is everything okay?" I needed to hear your voice," Amanda admitted. "There's so much I want to tell you, but I don't want to overwhelm you." Emily hesitated before replying. "I've been thinking a lot about you, about everything you've told me, and I want to know more. I want to understand." Amanda's chest tightened with emotion. "You don't know how much that means to me, Emily. I promise. We'll take this one step at a time. Whatever you need, for the first time in years. Amanda felt a flicker of hope. It was fragile, like a candle in the wind. but it was enough to keep her going. She wasn't just fighting for Sophie anymore. She was fighting for Emily, for the chance to rebuild what had been stolen from them. And she wouldn't stop until the truth was fully uncovered. Emily stared at her phone long after hanging up with Amanda. The emotions swirling inside her were a chaotic blend of curiosity, fear, and a strange sense of longing. She wanted answers, but each step closer to the truth felt like walking into uncharted territory. Could she really be Sophie? And if she was, what did that mean for the life she had built? The next morning, Emily took the subway to the cafe where she and Amanda had met before. She hadn't planned to call Amanda so soon, but something inside her urged her to act. Amanda arrived right on time, carrying a folder that looked well-worn from being handled repeatedly. "Thank you for meeting me," Emily said softly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Of course," Amanda replied, her smile warm but tinged with nervousness. "I brought more of what I've found. I think it might help answer some of your questions." Amanda placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were photos, documents, and the photocopy of the jeweler's receipt. Emily's eyes immediately locked on the picture of a little girl with hazel eyes and a dimpled smile. "Sophie, that's me," Emily whispered, picking up the photo. Amanda nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, that was taken on your 5th birthday. Just a few weeks before you disappeared." Emily studied the photo, her fingers tracing the edges. "I don't remember this. I don't remember anything about being Sophie." "You were so young," Amanda said gently. "And what happened to you? It's not surprising your memories are fragmented. Trauma has a way of burying things deep inside." Emily set the photo down and picked up the receipt. Her eyes scanned the handwriting, noting the date and the description of the pendants. She instinctively touched the pendant around her neck, its weight suddenly feeling heavier. "So this is the same one?" "Yes," Amanda confirmed. "I had it custom-made for your 5th birthday. One for you and one for me. You wore it that day at the park." Emily's throat tightened. "The park? That's where they found me, isn't it?" Amanda hesitated, her hands tightening slightly around her coffee cup. "Yes, you were found alone in Flushing Meadows Park, wearing that pendant. The orphanage took you in, but they didn't know who you were or where you came from." Emily's mind raced, flashes of fragmented memories surfacing, trees, laughter, a woman's voice calling her name, but they were blurry, like trying to see through a fogged window. "What happened to me?" Emily asked, her voice breaking. "Why did I end up there? Who did this to me?" Amanda took a deep breath, her heart breaking at the anguish in Emily's voice. "I've been working with a detective. We've uncovered some of the truth, but not everything. What we do know is that my sister Regina was involved. She hired someone to take you from me. It was supposed to be temporary, but something went wrong." Emily stared at Amanda, shock and disbelief etched into her features. "Your sister? You're telling me your own family did this?" Amanda nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I had no idea, Emily. She only confessed recently. She was jealous. Of my life, of you. She wanted to hurt me, and you paid the price." Emily pushed her chair back abruptly, standing as if the weight of the revelation was too much to bear. "I can't believe this, all these years. I thought I was just some orphan, but I was stolen by your sister." "I know it's overwhelming," Amanda said, her voice trembling. "But please, Emily, let me help you. Let me make this right." "How?" Emily asked, her tone sharp. "How do you make this right? You can't undo what happened. You can't give me back the life I was supposed to have." Amanda stood as well, her hands reaching out but stopping short of touching Emily. "You're right. I can't change the past, but I can give you the truth, and I can give you a future. With me, if you'll let me." Emily turned away, her arms crossed as she tried to process the storm of emotions raging inside her. The part of her that had always wondered where she came from wanted to believe Amanda, but another part, one shaped by years of abandonment and self-reliance, told her to run, to protect herself from more pain. "I need time," Emily said finally, her voice quieter now. "This is too much. I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're Sophie," Amanda said softly. "You're my daughter, and I will wait as long as it takes for you to believe that." Emily turned back to face Amanda, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You don't understand. If I believe this, if I let myself believe I'm Sophie, then what happens to Emily, the life I've built, the person I've become? It feels like none of it was real. Amanda stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. Emily is real. She's who you've had to be to survive. And Sophie is still inside you. They're both you, and they always will be. You don't have to choose between them. Emily blinked, a single tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time, Amanda saw a crack in the wall Emily had built around herself, a tiny glimmer of hope. I need to think, Emily said, her voice steadying. But, thank you for telling me. Amanda nodded, her heart aching with the weight of Emily's uncertainty. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. As Emily walked away, Amanda felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. The truth was out now, but the journey was far from over. She only hoped that when Emily was ready, they could face the next steps together. The days following Emily's revelation felt like a blur for Amanda. She spent her mornings pacing her penthouse, her mind replaying every detail of their conversation at the cafe, while Emily had agreed to think about everything Amanda had told her. The distance between them felt unbearable. It was like holding her breath, waiting for a sign of hope that her daughter, her Sophie, might finally return to her. But Amanda's restless thoughts were soon interrupted by Harper, who called with urgent news. Regina's been busy, Harper said, his voice carrying a mix of urgency and frustration. I've been tracking her movements since your confrontation. She's reached out to some old connections, including Victor Mendez. Amanda's blood ran cold. Victor? Why would she contact him? I think she's trying to cover her tracks, Harper replied. She knows we're closing in on the truth. If Victor or anyone else she worked with talks, it's over for her. Amanda's hand tightened around her phone. What do you need me to do? Stay out of it for now, Harper warned. I'm working with the authorities to get a warrant to bring Regina in for questioning. The last thing we need is for her to spook and disappear. Amanda hesitated but ultimately agreed. Fine, but if she tries anything, I want to know immediately. You'll be the first call I make, Harper assured her. Across town, Regina sat in her dimly lit apartment, her nerves fraying with every passing hour. She had always prided herself on being in control, but the walls were closing in. Amanda's determination, Harper's investigation, and Victor's loose tongue had left her cornered. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, and she grabbed it with trembling hands. It was Victor. We need to talk. His voice crackled through the line, laced with urgency. Amanda and that detective are onto everything. They're not letting this go. Regina clenched her jaw. You think I don't know that? What did you tell them? I told them what I had to, Victor said defensively. They already had most of the pieces. I just connected the dots. You idiot, Regina hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Victor's tone turned cold. This isn't just on me, Regina. You started this. I was following your orders. Regina's grip on the phone tightened. We need to meet, now. Later that evening, Regina met Victor in a seedy bar on the outskirts of the city. She wore a scarf and sunglasses to shield her identity, though the attempt at discretion felt futile. Victor was already seated in a booth at the back, nursing a drink with a sour expression. You're late, Victor muttered as Regina slid into the seat across from him. Spare me the commentary, Regina snapped. We don't have time for this. Victor leaned forward, his voice low. Harper is relentless. If you think you can wiggle your way out of this, you're dreaming. I'm not going down for this, Regina said through gritted teeth. If you keep your mouth shut, there's nothing they can prove. Victor laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from you. I'm already in deep. What's your plan, Regina? Run. Hide. Regina's eyes narrowed. No, I'm going to make sure Amanda drops this. Victor snorted. Good luck with that. She's like a dog with a bone. Regina's expression darkened. She has a weakness. Emily, if I can get to Emily, I can turn this around. Victor froze. You're not seriously thinking of dragging that girl into this. Haven't you done enough? I don't have a choice, Regina said coldly. If Emily starts believing Amanda's story, it's over for me. I need to make sure that doesn't happen. Victor shook his head, his disgust evident. You're insane. Maybe, Regina said, rising from her seat. but I'm not going to lose everything because of Amanda. The next day, Amanda received an unexpected call from Emily. "Can we meet?" Emily asked, her voice hesitant. "I've been thinking about everything." "Of course," Amanda said quickly. "Where should I meet you?" "There's a park near my apartment," Emily replied. "I'll text you the address." Amanda's heart raced as she hung up. This was it. Another chance to connect with her daughter, to rebuild the bond they had lost. She quickly grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, ignoring the nagging sense of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. When Amanda arrived at the park, Emily was sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree. She looked nervous, her fingers fidgeting with the pendant around her neck. Amanda approached slowly, offering a warm smile. "Hi," Amanda said softly, sitting beside her. "Thank you for calling." "I wasn't sure if I should," Emily admitted, "but I want to understand everything." Amanda reached into her bag and pulled out the folder of documents. "I brought everything we've found so far. The photos, the pendant receipt, the adoption records. It's all here." Emily hesitated before taking the folder, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Her eyes scanned the contents, pausing on the photo of Sophie. "It's me," Emily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I mean, it has to be me." Amanda placed a hand on Emily's arm, her voice trembling with emotion. "It is you, Sophie. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Before Emily could respond, Amanda's phone buzzed. It was Harper. "Amanda," he said, his voice urgent. "We just got word that Regina might be trying to reach Emily. You need to be careful." Amanda's stomach sank. "What do you mean?" "I mean Regina isn't done," Harper warned. "She's desperate, and desperate people do reckless things." Amanda's grip on her phone tightened as she glanced at Emily, who was still engrossed in the folder. The peaceful moment they were sharing felt fragile, like it could shatter at any second. "Thank you for the warning," Amanda said, her voice steady. "I'll be careful." As she hung up, Amanda made a silent vow. Whatever Regina was planning, she wouldn't let it touch Emily. Not again. The warning from Harper lingered in Amanda's mind like a dark cloud. Regina's desperation was palpable, and the possibility that she might involve Emily in her schemes sent a shiver down Amanda's spine. Amanda glanced at Emily, who was still leafing through the folder, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What's wrong?" Emily asked. Sensing Amanda's tension, Amanda hesitated but decided against alarming her daughter just yet. "Nothing," she said with a faint smile. "I'm just relieved that you're here." Emily didn't press further, but Amanda's unease didn't fade. She resolved to stay vigilant, knowing that Regina's unpredictability was her greatest weapon. Meanwhile, Regina sat in her car parked a block away from the park, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles turned white. She had been watching Amanda and Emily for the past 20 minutes, her stomach churning with a toxic mix of anger and fear. The sight of them sitting together, heads close as they examined something in a folder, made her blood boil. This was supposed to be over. Amanda wasn't supposed to find Emily, Sophie, and now that she had, Regina's carefully constructed facade was crumbling faster than she could contain it. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat and she picked it up, seeing Victor's name on the screen. She answered with a curt, "What?" "You're playing a dangerous game," Victor said, his voice sharp. "If you're thinking about going after that girl, you'll only make things worse." "I don't need your advice," Regina snapped. "You've done enough damage." "You don't get it, do you?" Victor shot back. "Amanda and that detective are building a case against you. If you go near Emily, you're just handing them more ammunition." Regina ended the call, tossing her phone aside. She couldn't let Victor's cowardice dictate her actions. She had already lost control of the situation, but she wasn't about to lose everything. Not yet. At the park, Amanda's phone buzzed again, this time with another call from Harper. She answered quickly, stepping a few feet away from Emily to keep her voice low. "We've confirmed that Regina's trying to interfere," Harper said. "We spotted her near your building earlier today, and it looks like she's been following you." Amanda's heart sank. "What do I do?" "Stay calm," Harper advised. "But keep Emily close. I'm heading to the park now. Don't let Regina get anywhere near her." Amanda glanced back at Emily, who had closed the folder and was staring out at the park, her expression pensive. Amanda's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. "Thank you, Harper," she said. Please hurry. Emily turned toward Amanda as she ended the call. Is everything okay? Amanda forced a smile, though her heart was pounding. Yes, everything's fine. I was just talking to the detective I mentioned. He's been helping us with everything. Emily nodded, her fingers still absently touching the pendant around her neck. I don't know what to do with all of this, she admitted. It feels like my whole life has been a lie. Amanda moved to sit beside her, her voice soft but firm. Your life isn't a lie, Emily. It's yours, no matter what happened in the past. But I'm here to help you figure it out, however long it takes. Emily looked at her, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. Thanks, Amanda. Or, should I call you Mom? Amanda's breath caught, her chest tightening with emotion. You can call me whatever feels right to you. Emily managed a small smile, though the weight of her confusion was still evident. I'll think about it. Before Amanda could respond, a voice interrupted them. Well, isn't this cozy? Both women turned to see Regina standing a few feet away, her arms crossed and a bitter smile on her face. Amanda immediately stood, positioning herself protectively in front of Emily. What are you doing here, Regina? Amanda demanded, her voice cold. I came to see my sister, Regina replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. And to meet this lovely young woman you've been so obsessed with. Emily rose slowly, her expression wary. You're Regina. Regina's smile widened. That's right, sweetheart. I'm the aunt your dear mother hasn't told you much about. Stay away from her, Amanda warned, her voice shaking with controlled fury. You've done enough damage. Oh, come on, Regina said, feigning innocence. I just want to talk. After all, I'm the reason you two found each other, aren't I? Emily frowned, confusion and unease flickering across her face. What does she mean? She's lying, Amanda said quickly, keeping her eyes on Regina. She's trying to manipulate you. Manipulate, Regina laughed, though the sound was hollow. I think she deserves to know the whole story, Amanda. You've told her about Sophie, about the pendant. But did you tell her how I was the one who tried to fix everything? How I spent years looking for her? That's a lie, Amanda shouted, her voice echoing across the park. You didn't fix anything. Regina, you caused this. You let Sophie disappear, and you did nothing to bring her back. Emily's eyes darted between the two women, her confusion growing. What is going on here? Emily, Amanda said, turning to her. Don't listen to her. She's desperate because she knows the truth is coming out. She's the reason you were taken. Emily stepped back, her expression torn. I don't understand. How could you? Emily, please, Amanda said, her voice softening. I'm trying to protect you. But before Emily could respond, Harper arrived, his presence immediately diffusing some of the tension. He stepped between Amanda and Regina, his authoritative gaze fixed on the latter. That's enough, Harper said firmly. Regina Montgomery, you need to leave now. Regina scoffed, but didn't argue. She glanced at Amanda one last time, her eyes filled with venom. This isn't over. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Amanda and Emily standing in the silence of the park. As Harper escorted them to Amanda's car, Emily spoke, her voice trembling. She's the one who did this to me, isn't she? Amanda nodded, her heart breaking at the pain in Emily's voice. Yes, but I promise you, she'll never hurt you again. Emily didn't respond. But as she climbed into the car, Amanda saw something shift in her expression, a determination to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. Emily sat in the passenger seat of Amanda's car, her thoughts churning as the city streets blurred past. The confrontation with Regina had left her shaken, her trust in everything she thought she knew crumbling. Amanda's presence beside her felt steady and reassuring, but the storm inside Emily was far from calm. Emily, Amanda said gently, breaking the silence. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Regina shouldn't have been there, and I should have been more prepared. Emily shook her head, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the pendant around her neck. It's not your fault. I don't understand why she would do something like this. What kind of person hurts their own family? Amanda's jaw tightened, the years of betrayal and anger bubbling to the surface. Regina was always jealous. I didn't see it back then, or maybe I didn't want to, but she's been consumed by envy her entire life. What she did to you was unforgivable. Emily turned to Amanda, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. And you didn't know all these years. You had no idea. No, Amanda said softly. I thought I'd lost you because of some random tragedy. I searched everywhere, Emily. I never stopped looking. If I'd known... Her voice cracked, and she gripped the steering wheel tighter. If I'd known it was Regina, I would have stopped her. I would have brought you back. Emily looked down at her hands, her voice trembling. And what if I don't even know who I am anymore? You've spent 18 years searching for Sophie, but I've spent that time being Emily. What if I can't be who you want me to be? Amanda pulled over to the side of the road, turning to face her. Listen to me, Emily. I don't want you to be anyone other than who you are, Sophie or Emily. It doesn't matter to me. You're my daughter, and I love you. That's all I care about. Emily blinked back tears, the sincerity in Amanda's voice hitting her like a wave. I want to believe that. I really do, but it's so much. Too much. Amanda reached out, her hand resting gently on Emily's. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Meanwhile, Regina sat in her apartment, pacing the floor as she chain-smoked, her nerves fraying with every puff. She knew she was out of options. Amanda was too close to the truth, and Emily, Sophie, was slipping further from her grasp. Harper's presence was the final nail in her coffin. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, and she grabbed it, her heart sinking when she saw the name on the screen. Victor Mendez. What do you want? She snapped, her voice sharp. Victor's tone was cold. Harper came to see me again. He knows everything, Regina. It's only a matter of time before they pin this all on you. They won't, Regina hissed. I can still fix this. Fix this? Victor laughed bitterly. You're delusional. The cops are building a case, and Amanda's not going to stop, face it. You're done. Regina's grip tightened on the phone. I'm not done until I say I am. Stay out of my way, Victor. She hung up, her mind racing. She needed a plan. Something bold. Something that would shift the balance of power back in her favor, and she knew exactly where to start. The next day, Amanda and Emily sat in the penthouse, poring over the documents Harper had provided. Emily still seemed distant, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes as she sifted through the evidence. So this man, Emily said, pointing to a name in the report, Victor Mendez, he's the one who took me. He's the one Regina hired, Amanda confirmed. But he handed you off to someone else. A stranger we're still trying to identify. Emily frowned, the weight of the revelation settling heavily. And Regina, what happens to her now? Harper's building a case against her, Amanda said. But it's complicated. Without solid proof, she might get away with it. Emily's expression darkened. She doesn't deserve to. She won't, Amanda promised. I'll make sure of it. Just as the words left her mouth, Amanda's phone buzzed. It was Harper. Amanda, he said, his voice tense. You need to be careful. We've received word that Regina's been asking around about Emily. She's planning something, but we don't know what. Amanda's heart sank. What do you mean, is Emily in danger? We're not sure yet, Harper admitted. But I'm sending someone to keep an eye on her, just in case. Don't let her out of your sight. Amanda ended the call, her worry evident. Emily noticed immediately. What's wrong? Harper thinks Regina might be planning something, Amanda admitted. He's sending someone to watch over you, but I need you to be careful. Emily's eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. She wouldn't hurt me, would she? I don't know, Amanda said honestly, but I won't let anything happen to you. That evening, Emily stayed at the penthouse, her nerves on edge as she tried to process everything. Amanda did her best to reassure her, but the tension was palpable as they sat in the living room. A knock at the door startled them both. Amanda froze, exchanging a wary glance with Emily before approaching the door. Who is it? She called. It's Harper, came the familiar voice. Amanda exhaled in relief, opening the door to find Harper standing there, his expression serious. What's going on? She asked. We found something, Harper said, stepping inside. It's about the man Victor handed Sophie to. We think we've identified him. Emily stood, her curiosity piqued. Who is he? Harper pulled out a file, handing it to Amanda. His name is Alan Rourke. He was a known figure in trafficking circles at the time, but he disappeared years ago. We think he might still be operating under an alias." Amanda flipped through the file, her stomach turning at the details. "What do we do now?" "We find him," Harper said firmly. "And when we do, we get the answers you've been waiting for." As Amanda nodded, Emily stepped closer, her voice trembling but resolute. "I want to help." Amanda looked at her, her heart swelling with pride and worry. "You don't have to do this, Emily." "I know," Emily said, "but I need to, for myself, for Sophie." Amanda placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, her voice steady. "Then we'll do it together." As the three of them began planning their next steps, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. The end was in sight, but the path ahead was fraught with danger, and Amanda knew they would need every ounce of courage to face what was coming next. The morning dawned with an unsettling quiet in Amanda's penthouse. The city's usual hum of life felt muted, as Amanda, Emily, and Harper prepared to take the next step in their pursuit of the truth. The name Alan Rourke had cracked open a new lead, and while it was promising, it also carried the weight of uncertainty and danger. Harper laid a map across the dining table, marking key locations tied to Rourke's known aliases. If he's still in the area, he's most likely operating under a fake identity. Traffickers like him don't just disappear, they adapt. We've traced some of his movements to a warehouse in Queens, but we don't have concrete proof that he's there. Amanda studied the map, her expression grim. "What do we do now?" "We approach cautiously," Harper replied. "I've already contacted the authorities to assist, but we'll need to move carefully. If he's there and realizes we're onto him, he could disappear again, or worse." Emily, standing a few feet away, spoke up. "I want to go with you." Amanda turned to her, alarm flashing in her eyes. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. I need to see this through," Emily said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "If this man knows anything about what happened to me, I want to hear it. I deserve to hear it," Harper interjected, his tone firm but understanding. "Emily, I get why you feel that way, but situations like this can escalate quickly. It's best if you stay safe while we handle it." Emily crossed her arms, her resolve unshaken. "I'm not asking. I've spent my entire life wondering who I am and where I came from. If there's even a chance this man has the answers, I need to be there." Amanda's heart ached at the determination in Emily's voice. Her daughter had already been through so much, and while Amanda wanted to shield her from any further pain, she also knew how important this moment was for Emily. "All right," Amanda said reluctantly, "but you stay in the car." "No exceptions," Emily nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "Okay, I can do that." That afternoon, the three of them drove to Queens, their destination a rundown industrial district. The warehouse Harper had identified loomed in the distance, its rusted exterior and broken windows a stark reminder of the kind of world they were stepping into. Harper parked a block away, his gaze scanning the area. "The police are on their way, but we'll go in first to assess the situation. Stay low, stay quiet, and don't draw attention." Amanda nodded, her nerves taut as she glanced at Emily in the back seat. "You stay here," she reminded her. "No matter what happens." "I will," Emily promised. Though her expression betrayed her anxiety, Harper and Amanda exited the car, moving cautiously toward the warehouse. The air was thick with tension, each step carrying the weight of anticipation. Harper signaled for Amanda to stay behind him as he approached the side entrance, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior cluttered with old machinery and stacks of wooden crates. Harper gestured for Amanda to stay close as they moved deeper into the building, their footsteps echoing softly against the concrete floor. In the distance, voices drifted through the air, low and indistinct. Harper motioned for Amanda to stop, crouching behind a stack of crates as he peered around the corner. Two men stood near a desk, one of them matching the description of Alan Rourke. "That's him," Harper whispered, his tone sharp. "Stay here." Amanda nodded, her heart pounding as Harper stepped forward, his badge in hand. "Alan Rourke," he called, his voice authoritative. "NYPD, we need to talk." The two men froze, their eyes darting toward Harper. Rourke's face twisted in recognition, and without warning, he bolted toward the back of the warehouse. "Stop," Harper shouted, drawing his weapon as he pursued the fleeing man. Amanda hesitated for a moment before following, her instincts screaming at her to stay close. Harper chased Rourke through the maze of crates and machinery, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. Amanda kept a safe distance, her eyes darting around for any sign of danger. Rourke reached a metal staircase leading to a second level, his heavy footsteps clanging against the steel. Harper was right behind him, his movements swift and deliberate. "Alan," Harper barked, his voice carrying an edge of warning. "You're only making this worse for yourself. Stop running." Rourke reached the top of the stairs and turned, his face a mask of defiance. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you've got the wrong guy." "We'll see about that," Harper shot back, leveling his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." Amanda arrived at the base of the staircase just as Rourke began to comply, raising his hands slowly, but the look in his eyes betrayed a desperate man, one who had spent years running and wasn't ready to stop. As Harper cuffed him, Amanda stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion. "Do you know who I am?" Rourke glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Never seen you before in my life." "You took my daughter," Amanda said, her voice rising. 18 years ago. Her name was Sophie Montgomery. Rourke's face darkened, his bravado faltering for the first time. "I don't know anything about that." "You're lying," Amanda snapped. "Victor Mendez handed her over to you. We know everything." Rourke looked away, his jaw tightening. Harper intervened, his voice cold. "You're coming with us. If you don't want this to get worse, I suggest you start talking." As Harper escorted Rourke down the stairs, Amanda's chest heaved with a mix of anger and desperation. This man held the answers she had been searching for, and she wouldn't stop until she got them. Outside, Emily watched from the car as Harper emerged with Rourke in handcuffs. Her heart pounded as she saw Amanda close behind, her face etched with determination. Emily opened the door, stepping out as Amanda approached. "Is that him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Amanda nodded, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Yes, and we're going to make him tell us everything." As the police arrived to take Rourke into custody, Amanda and Emily stood side by side, their resolve unwavering. The truth was within reach, and together, they would face whatever came next.